Patriot Act infringed upon our rights to win the war on terrorism. People said, once you give Congress power, you're never going to get it back, and we haven't gotten it back. So, any good scam has a seed of truth in it.
Welcome to the Crypto Swamp Creatures, the show you never knew you needed and still don't want anyways. I'm Christopher Alexander, your blockchain and advocacy communications expert.
And I'm Justin Wallin, your guide through the often murky world of politics and polling.
Every week, we dive into the intersection of crypto, policy, and politics without taking sides. We're here to give you the straight, data-driven analysis that influences the decisions of those who want to win or want to be elected.
Think of it as a late 80s newscast, but with a twist. We bring you the serious stuff, but with a dash of sardonic wit and just a hint of irreverence.
So whether you're a crypto enthusiast, a policy wonk, or just someone who appreciates a data-driven approach, this is your place.
We bring you both sides, weigh the impact on crypto, and then we share what we use for show prep every week on our Medium.
So remember, no one is as smart as someone who agrees with you. And now get ready to enter the no swamp zone.
Welcome to the Crypto Swamp Creatures, and it just wouldn't be a week going by if we didn't talk about various scams or criminal activity from bankers. So, Justin, I want to talk about this with you. I'm going to kind of look at my screen a little bit. So, faux pas, since we don't have a production studio with better teleprompters yet. I'd like to compare and contrast two crypto scams. They're not entirely comparable, right? But both of them are single entities. So we're not talking about exchanges and we're not talking about collectives here. But let's begin with crypto is truly for everyone. I believe the world's oldest crypto scammer has been convicted. It was a California attorney who was in Beverly Hills. He had his license suspended twice. Justin, you want to lay odds on whether this guy drove or drives a Bentley or Rolls Royce?
Well, without question, he drove a I'm not going to say used, a pre-owned Bentley, and I'm just going to say it makes you proud to be a Californian.
Yeah, and if he didn't, who would hire him?
That's right. The power of a zip code and legal letterhead is really the tale that we're telling here.
It is, and by the way, I like to imagine that if he didn't own a Rolls or a Bentley and he rolled up in like a Mercedes, then he told people that his Bentley was in the shop.
That's the loaner.
And now I cannot cast aspersions on him. I don't know him. I don't know of him. But based on the charges, were he to do that, it wouldn't surprise me. I could say that. So the guy's name's David Cagle. He's 86 years old.
Sketching enthusiast.
It was a $9.5 million Ponzi scheme. He got dinged for 14, so I'm not really sure if some people got some treble damages or how that worked out. But he's got to pay $14 million. And the bullet point on the article I'm reading, number 3 behind that is, by the way, the case shows the need for thorough due diligence among investors to avoid scams. I'm not making that up. Yeah, I love journalists.
What were the returns again? So let's start with that. The due diligence world.
Yes. So Cagle and 2 others, we'll get to them in a second, tricked people into investing in a trading program. It was supposed to be these bots that were going to do all this trading. Now, by the way, there's something interesting there. It's what FTX did. Probably what they were duped into was this arbitrage trading, which primarily actually happens through South Korea. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but the South Korean cryptocurrency markets were closed to the outside world. I think you had to be a South Korean citizen to be able to invest in them. But for some reason, and I don't know why, we need to get a zip sweater on here to explain it, but the listings on the South Korean crypto exchanges for Bitcoin were higher than anywhere else in the world. So what you did was you got all the US, I don't know if you had to have Bitcoin to do it, but you got all the money you could, and you bought in the morning in South Korea and sold it immediately on the US market. And you made just a guaranteed fractional return. And
it's a good deal.
You put hundreds of millions of dollars in every day, you get $1 million or $2 back. So that's probably what he was promised. That would be the kind of bot trading that would work. So any good scam has a or intelligence activity has a seed of truth in it. And then what you do is you apply psychological pressure to get people to make a bad decision. That's just kind of how it works. So they were told they would get 20 to a 100% return on their investment. Not clear what the time frame was, but I suspect it was like 15 minutes. I think it was
transfer in, and it'll be there before you know it.
Yeah, it's certainly under a year, I would imagine. But we don't know. We don't know what the terms were. Now, to reassure people, and again, this is what makes me think it's Bitcoin arbitrage through South Korea, kind of the next line, victims were also deceived by Cagle's false assurance that he had 1,000 Bitcoins. At that time, those were only worth 11 million in 2018, held in escrow. And he seems to have written that or other documents on his firm's letterhead, which he forged.
Right.
And so,
two things. The legal letterhead is powerful. It is very powerful. But what does it presume? It presumes that that person actually is an attorney, which is the other part of the story.
It does. I do think he was an attorney at that time. Or no, he was not, was he? You're right. He was disbarred and or suspended, or technically it's both. Yes. So that in itself is funny.
These are things you could easily check. This doesn't take a rocket. So you don't have to hire an attorney to go find out if an attorney is in good standing.
Yeah, it's
very easy to check.
Someone else we know who likes to ask for advice and never pay anyone. I'll just leave it at that. I'm sure you know who I mean. I was working with him on a deal, and these Air Force guys, which, as I like to say, the Air Force is a wonderful company. It's a lot like the military. Were telling me they were like super spooks, which is usually my first area of concern. They said they were special forces for this sort of problem. I'm like, actually, I know the people that would be considered that, and they don't know who you are, but whatever. But they had these contracts, and I'm looking at them. And the law firm was on there. So I hit the button to go to their website, and it looks terrible, the website. And, lawyers that are supposed to be doing the $300, $400 million deals are obsessed with image. I don't know if you know about the whole Jeep Cherokee thing, like the DC lawyers all drive those to not appear too rich, but to make it clear they could afford things. They obsess over this stuff. Just like they need a nice watch, but not too nice. It's nauseating. It's real. But no lawyer that would have like a box at the Kentucky Derby is going to have an Angel Fire website from 1998.
Angel Fire. Right? Well played, Christopher. Well played.
It may have actually been that. So now I'm a little suspicious. Yeah. And but they're Canadian, and the Canadians are known for being humble and being taxed to death. So maybe they really couldn't afford it on their website, even on $300 million deals. But I clicked on the link to their office, and it was a home in Ontario, Canada.
Nice.
But it wasn't a nice home. Like maybe the lawyer had just said, you know what, to heck with the overhead. All the lawyers never do that because they care about image. But okay, maybe it's like a mansion. No. This looked like you see those YouTube videos about like a shocking murder, and they have a house in the thumbnail. That's what this was. It, like an abandoned lot next to
Bodies found beneath home.
Yeah.
Crawl space is always mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much like someone who was kept in the basement for 12 years. Like that's what it looked like. And so I called this guy who said he was a counter intel guy, which explains why the Chinese get so much of our stuff. And I said, did you click on the links here, man? Because is this the address? And there was an awkward pause. And that was when I moved on to other deals and the work.
Yeah.
But so yeah, it's funny though. You have a nice looking letterhead, have an address in a prestigious place, and then no one clicks on it to find out you're in the WeWork, and you can't even rent the office in the WeWork.
Yeah.
And the kind of power of costume. So
these things, right? And this goes for classic stock market trading. It goes for crypto. It goes for all of these things. Anything where people do get rich, it is the stomping ground for BS. And people say it a million times. If the returns are that high and you're not the person who created it, if it's not your particular formula, your particular secret sauce, and therefore you can believe in it, if someone else, they're lying to you. I mean, that's all there is to it. It is a scam, and shame on you for jumping on board.
And scammers live in the space where you're too lazy to do due diligence.
That's right.
It's
a confidence trickster, basically. It's the old confidence trickster from P.G. Wodehouse novels.
You get some wormwood and it's going to cure cancer. Just click the links. For the love of God, just click the links and see what happens. It usually falls apart. Just like, there was a scheme that was working for a while for Coinbase. Someone would call and say, I'm with Coinbase and your account has been connected to the blockchain, your wallet, and it's dispersing money. Give us part of your seed phrase. And that reduced the probability to be able to hack it, and then they drain the account. Now, if anyone claims they're from a Fortune, 500 company or something as big as Coinbase, I don't know if they've broken into the Fortune 500, and they want to help you as a form of what are you thinking?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That is not the call you're going to get.
Google wants to help you when? When did that happen?
It's so true. It is absolutely true. I sent a significantly large chunk of money to a person who did some work for us, and about 30 days later, he said, "Hey, whatever happened with this invoice?" I'm like, "Well, I sent it to you on the day," and without getting into it and casting aspersion on the transfer company, or you can either wire something directly, which is very clear, or there are kind of intermediaries, right? Yeah. If you send an invoice, sometimes you can pay, which is ACH based, but it's through an intermediary. The point was, it went through that intermediary, then they hadn't released the funds for 30 days. And why? So first off, they don't tell you. They never told him. And second off, he calls and finds out, it's because some kind of 1099 issue. They're just keeping it afloat. I mean, no one's ever going to tell you, ever, ever. This is what happened. How can we help you? Never. Yep. No one's calling you for any of those reasons.
Well, that is a perfect segue, talking about banks and criminality. So what I want to start with is, anytime Elizabeth Warren and a few others, but Elizabeth Warren, or others tell you that crypto is a scam, remember that you have to convert cryptocurrency, except in the rarest of cases, into fiat, into the local currency of the place that you are transacting in. So I have a crypto.com card. I had another one, BitPay. I don't know if they've ever fixed their problems, by the way. But I'd scan the card, and it can be Bitcoin, it can be Ethereum, it can be US dollar, it can be any just virtually about any cryptocurrency. It converts itself to dollars, and I pay for it with a Visa card. So the lesson here is you can't spend cryptocurrency without a bank, except in very rare cases where you're throwing someone a thumb drive full of money for a crate of munitions, which even then is probably not the best idea. So what you need is a bank. And so we talked about the $9 million Ponzi scheme and $14 million. Of course, it was a big year for crypto fines. I think for the first time, crypto did hit $1 billion. But let's just talk about TD Bank. TD Bank is paying $3 billion in penalties. And I'm going to be very careful because they will absolutely sue us. For criminal money laundering. It's alleged, or I guess now settled, that they were laundering money for drug cartels. Now, when Justin and I were talking about this, I said, Justin, how is that possible? All the crypto money all the cartel money is lobbied in crypto.
That's what we're told.
Crypto. So do they have a laundering portfolio? And then we realized they probably actually do. But $3 billion, they cannot grow beyond $434 billion. So I think this also provides you some perspective on how much that fine does or doesn't hurt them. But it's the biggest since 2018. So Justin, you're less crypto adjacent than me, or you might be crypto adjacent. Arguably, what do you think of $3 billion in banking? And even I think it was $1 billion for FTX. I mean, it was hefty, but What do you think of the demonization of crypto and then everyone kind of shrugging at TD Bank?
Yeah, I mean, it is an ongoing meme, right? I mean, banks continue to behave badly, and I am not wading into those waters of whether they knew or didn't know. The prosecutor had very clear things to say about that in the article, but the reality is they did not exercise controls for some 4, 5, or 6 years, and that lack of exercise of controls allowed for cartels to launder an extraordinary amount of money, hence the fine and the imposition of limiting their growth. Right? This is something that the bank did, and banks regularly are fined massive fines every single year. You see these things. This is nothing new, and yet crypto is the poster child for all things nefarious. It's almost as if crypto were somehow confused with the dark web, and they are not the same. They are different, very meaningfully different. But when you speak to a lot of policyholders, perhaps most policymakers, excuse me, it seems that confusion is pronounced.
It reminds me late 90s, early 2000s of SUVs. Remember, like SUVs did things as if they were like a malevolent entity. So SUVs would crash into things, not drivers. And if a sedan flipped through a nunnery, it was a drunken driver. But if an SUV ran over someone at a crosswalk, the SUV did it. Like it was like pristine.
Right. SUV kills 3 in late accident. Yes.
Yeah, so it seems similar. But boy, I mean, here's the scope of the affair again in the article, because we're legitimately afraid of being sued by TD Bank. Where to go? I don't want to. They failed to monitor $18.3 trillion. Now, I'm just going to look up really quick what the current crypto market cap is, because I believe it's around $3 trillion. 2.36 trillion. Not bad.
Oh, okay.
Guessing. So they
you would have to fail to oversee the entirety of the crypto market by a distinct multiple.
Maybe slightly more if we're a little better at figuring. But yes, so it allowed 3 money laundering networks to transfer more than $670 million through accounts at the bank. Now, I have a feeling that we're not going to hear maybe 1 or 2 of the entities that were involved in the money laundering because they're probably the Haqqani network. We'll file that away for people. If you know who they are, then you'll know.
Christopher did not say that as a fact or even a supposition. That was a joke. And unrelated to this case.
I do believe I could defend that in court, but I don't know. I'm speculating. I am merely commenting, to put my messaging job to work. I'm merely commenting on a known and highly effective terror financing group. Not there network. There's a guy, by the way, I love this, a guy named David. David starts moving money around. He's got a breeding. David, he personally moved $470 million through TD Bank branches. So in August 2021, again, quoted, this is from the Attorney General, TD Bank store manager emailed another store manager and remarked, quote, "You guys really need to shut this down, lol." In February 2021, that was August, one TD Bank store employee saw that David's network, so something tells me someone's getting a criminal conspiracy charge worked up against him, had purchased more than $1 million in official bank checks with cash in a single day. Garland said the employee asked, quote, "How is that not money laundering a bank off a back office?" Another TD Bank employee responded with, quote, "Oh, it 100% is."
Oh my God, really?
I'm reading it from our, of course, you can find this at our Medium, which has been neglected of late, but I'm going to put this on there also for anyone who does media monitoring looking for lawsuits. We'll throw that up there so people could read this. It's like pretty funny, except for the fact that you're like killing people, trafficking human beings, and all sorts of things on the back of this money, which is particularly bad. So they're bad. There we go. From fentanyl to narcotics trafficking to terrorist financing and human trafficking, TD Bank's chronic failures provided a fertile ground for a host of illicit activity to penetrate our financial system. Now, that statement does not preclude that any of those things occurred from the money. They're describing the types of activity money launderers, but the triads are in this. It just gets richer and richer. Yeah, the Wall Street Journal reported in May that the DOJ was investigating how Chinese organized crime groups and drug traffickers use TD Bank to launder money derived from the sale of fentanyl. Okay, so maybe the fentanyl charge is a little bit accurate. And we'll close off with this. I do like to ding Senator Elizabeth Warren for a number of reasons, not the least of which were genetic tests she once took. But TD Bank is big in her state, and she came out and bashed it. Like, she doesn't excuse big banks behaving badly to exclusively bash crypto. But I'll tell you what she said, because it's interesting, and hats off to her on this. Big banks treat government fines as the cost of doing business, which is literally something Justin and I were talking about. They do that. This settlement lets bad bank executives off the hook for allowing TD Bank to be used as a criminal slush fund, quoting her. The DOJ and the Office of Comptroller of Currency need to do better in enforcing our anti-money laundering laws. So, good for her on that. They do view it as cost of doing business. And TD Bank responded brilliantly, I would say. They said, this is a sad day in our history.
So now, by the way, for this, we were talking earlier, a couple segments earlier, about branding and messaging and so forth. And this falls right in it, right? Because if you are a crypto enthusiast or even vaguely interested in this world, then it is easy to simply look at this and say, see, the focus should be on the banks and all their bad behavior. They are awful, and let's focus on that. And unfortunately, that is wrong. You don't win the case by that. First off, banks have a lot of friends. Turns out you have to have good friends in banking in order to make the world go round. So you have to be very careful about saying that one group is always awful, right? Or even suggesting that. What you can say is we have clear and definitive proof of a lot of bad behavior in this sector. And when it is identified, it is fine because it is against the law and is rectified under existing law, right? Let's contrast that with this sector, and let's point out the components that make it much less easy to do that behavior. And we're still underneath the laws that should that behavior occur, those fines and restrictions could be exacted, right? But this industry has certain things that are definitively better in terms of restricting or reducing the opportunity for that kind of behavior. And that's where the juxtaposition matters. You can't just say, you can't just say, well, we were talking about earlier, Kamala Harris is not going to win by just simply saying former President Trump is bad. You don't win that. You have to win by saying this is a problem and this is something that is better and why. That's the narrative.
And you've touched on a bit of a flashpoint. There was just a congressional hearing regarding this, right? At the core for anti-money laundering are know your customer requirements and a few other things. And some really, genuinely smart policy people are fundamentally opposed to know your customer requirements. And they argue that it is a violation of people's rights. I see it. And in fact, I was on our sister show, which we both got to get back on soon, over at DYOR. And right after that, it happened. And I said, guys, I got to say, having worked in counterterrorism, this is a really useful tool. Like, the guys that won the war on terror were not the slope-shouldered, door-kicking goons that were, putting dots on foreheads. It was the criminal money laundering element at SOCOM who worked with the banks and said, how do I launder money? There was signals intelligence. These Al-Qaeda guys, ISIS guys, begging for funding, begging for money to be able to pay the bills. Literally, they couldn't. They choked that off, and this was a tool. Now, then it goes to the larger discussion, a much bigger one, and maybe we'll have some other time. But the Patriot Act infringed upon our rights to win the war on terrorism. People said, once you give Congress power, you're never going to get it back, and we haven't gotten it back. So now, when you're trying to buy something and you wire money, it gets frozen because the bank is terrified, except TD Bank apparently, which had is terrified of being charged by the DOJ or having an investigation because those are unbelievably expensive, whether you did anything wrong or not. I don't think people realize when the U.S. government charges you, even when they're wrong, like you're not getting your expenses paid.
No,
it doesn't work that way. You're not allowed to sue the government. So it's a problem. So you need to be far away from the appearance of impropriety. And the crypto community is struggling with this. They're against. There's a group and they make a very reasonable argument. I want to make that clear against KYC requirements and other anti-money laundering requirements, AML. So it's a tough one within the community, and don't joke. By the way, don't joke about drug cartel money laundering on your corporate email. It's a little suggestion I'm gonna have, and to kind of to close out back to the messaging. What I have learned is to craft the most boring, uninteresting, fact-derived statement you possibly can and feign some empathy. And so I believe TD Bank nailed it. Right? This is a sad chapter in our history. Let me see here. I get to the other part of it. We have taken full responsibility for the failures of our U.S. AML, anti-money laundering program, and are making the investments, changes, and enhancements required to deliver on our commitments. And then he closed with, "This is a difficult chapter in our bank's history. These failures took place on my watch as CEO, and I apologize to all our stakeholders." So again, not saying the TD Bank did this, but feign empathy, make it uninteresting, and you just don't put fuel on the fire. So you pay the fine.
Yeah, this too will be in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, I mean, it only cost them 5% of their stock for like a couple hours. That's what it looked like. And so actually, what I do want to close with is, and I've been in the room. I've heard this from people, and I want to say no room I was in was anyone talking about doing anything overtly illegal. Well, I was once, but that was in uniform, so that was state sanctioned. But I have been in the room where there's a lack of regulatory clarity. Hello, SEC and crypto, and people have said, "What's the fine going to cost? Cost of doing business." I mean, it's a legitimate thing. And while Senator Warren characterized the phrase as the benchmark of evil, that's not always entirely true. Sometimes you don't have regulatory clarity, like for the crypto industry. A lot of crypto firms today say, well, maybe we should just pay the fine and take the market growth.
Yeah, it's a long-standing calculation that just about every business does. I mean, certainly tech is perhaps in our recent history the most notable for it. Move fast and break things means we'll pay the fine.
It does. It didn't. You built boats, and didn't you have a maybe we pay the fines moment? Or am I correct?
No, we did not. And there's a reason for that. It's a terrific question, by the way. The reason for that was what we were evaluating was structure and strength. And that is, there's trade-offs, right? But ultimately, those things go offshore and people's lives are at risk. So it was never a question of fines or a question of that. It was really a question of, can we get this accomplished within the design parameters that people have paid for at that strength level that we need to, the tolerance that we need to achieve. So that's what it was.
Gotcha. And I didn't think you were compromising safety at all. I was thinking there was something about like disposal of materials or something that could lead to a fine. And again, I'm also not saying that you were dumping toxic waste in a lake.
It's an interesting point, and this may be what you're talking about. So there is, it's not entirely related. It may not be what you're talking about, but sometimes there are oddities that you encounter that you just deal with. Like, for example, the way we built stuff and the process that we used had a zero emissions, zero VOCs, right? Which is amazing. But you can measure VOCs. These things are measurable. That's why they're finable. So what would happen is we would have the regulatory inspector come down, someone from AQMD, and they would go into our little factory and measure what ultimately came out of a carbon exhaust, right? So there's a whole lot of other stuff to it. Ultimately came through a carbon exhaust, and there's zero measurement. And so it's just terrific. I'm very proud of that. It's amazing. We can't put zero.
That's what it was.
Yeah, that's what it was. So we had to make up a number. I'm like, well, Put a number that makes the powers that be happy, but 0 is 0. But sometimes in the world of law, you can't do that even when your performance is extraordinary.
And in DC, you could have just had an envelope and said, "I'd like to make a donation to the regulator's ball," and it would have all gone away. But or so I've heard. I have never done it, so I am. But there was a rash of places being closed for liquor violations all throughout Baltimore over the past couple of weeks. And so either they did an enforcement action because people weren't updating things, or they just shut things down because there was a courtesy fee that hadn't been paid. I don't know. There's a lot of speculation in the community. All right. Well, this one's a bit of a long one, but I think worth it. It's a more complex issue, and kind of hilarious that this 86-year-old guy hatched this Ocean's 11's plot and is now like, this part's not, but he's in hospice. I'm pretty sure his goal was to check out before that came due, and perhaps fortunately for him, it didn't work out that way. Fortunately for everyone that he was caught, and hopefully he has the money to pay it back. I'm going to be really curious to see if restitution's paid on that, or if that guy, deals in the more spiritual treasures angle instead. But.
And that's all for this week on the Crypto Swamp Creatures.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the intersection of crypto, politics, and policy.
Remember, the data doesn't lie, and neither do we. Well, not about anything important anyways.
Until next time, stay informed, stay skeptical, stay out of the swamp.
Some